Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 24th of September. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. I'm Mark Broome. Thanks ever so much for joining us on this rainy Wednesday here in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Addressing the UN Climate Summit in New York, President Park Geun-hye says the world should look past the burdens and see the economic opportunities of tackling climate change. South Korea's Foreign Minister Yun Byung-se proposes inter-Korean dialogue on North Korea's human rights. Plus, the al-Qaeda-linked al-Nusra front says its leader has been killed in a US airstrike in Syria. A tweet from the group was accompanied by a photo of the former fighter's dead body. We start with President Park Geun-hye's first day at the United Nations. Addressing leaders from more than 100 countries at the UN Climate Summit in New York, the president said the world should not see the response to climate change as a burden, but rather as an opportunity to create a new growth engine for the future. Our Che Yu-sun starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye has called on the international community to face up to one of the greatest challenges of our time, climate change. Addressing the UN Climate Summit, a high-level gathering to catalyze a global action plan on curbing carbon emissions by next year, the Korean president said the world should consider climate action as an opportunity, not a burden.
How we view the climate agenda as boon or bane will bring huge differences. Investing in the chance to unlock new energy industries and jobs can ignite fresh engines of future growth.
President Park said her government is seeking to nurture new energy industries in dealing with climate change, such as energy storage systems for non-stop supply, zero-energy buildings, and self-sufficient eco-friendly towns. To encourage the private sector to innovate in reducing emissions, the president said the market should reward them for their work. For everyone to participate in the global campaign, President Park said the developed world must assist their developing counterparts by sharing the required technology and know-how.
All countries need to do their share if we are to limit global warming to 2 degrees by this century's end. Korea will work to submit next year our plan to support the post-2020 climate regime.
The Korean leader then said Seoul will contribute up to $100 million to the Korea-based Green Climate Fund, established to aid the developing nations on top of the $50 million it's currently paying. Pledging to share Korea's own knowledge and experiences internationally, President Park announced her country will become the first in Asia to implement an emission trading scheme next year. Che Yu-sun, Arirang News, New York.
Ahead of her address at the UN Climate Summit, President Park Geun-hye met with UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon and World Bank President Jim Yong Kim. At a private banquet held in her honor, President Park discussed various global issues with Secretary-General Ban, including North Korea, assistance for world epidemics and underdeveloped nations, and also military action against Islamic State militants in Syria. She lauded the Secretary-General's efforts to reform the UN, while Ban thanked President Park for appearing before the UN Climate Summit. Also in New York, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yun Byung-se has proposed inter-Korean dialogue with the North on human rights issues after praising Pyongyang for its apparent eagerness to hold such talks. The minister's comments came during a ministerial meeting on North Korea's human rights on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. The South Korean official urged the North to resolve human rights issues regarding the countless families separated by the Korean War and also people from South Korea and Japan abducted by the North. US Secretary of State John Kerry, who hosted this event, condemned North Korea's infamous political prison camps. He said they were an evil system, and he called for them to be closed down immediately. The United States has pledged to destroy all landmines outside of the Korean peninsula. The US State Department said on Tuesday that the country will only use mines for the defense of South Korea, considering the unique circumstances here. The new announcement comes in line with the department's statement back in June that said it will no longer produce, nor will it acquire landmines. It also underscored its commitment to humanitarian aims of the Ottawa Convention in 1999 that prohibits the use and the production of landmines. Now, turning to domestic politics, and despite the parliamentary standstill that continues to this day over the contentious Sewol-ho ferry bill, the ruling Saenuri Party is determined to push through its plans to reform the public sector. Our Ji Myung-gil has this report.
The Park Geun-hye administration and the ruling Saenuri Party are on the same track, undertaking a full-fledged reform of the public sector. It calls for revising laws to make it possible to liquidate public companies with chronic deficits and preventing the practice of filling top public firm posts with political appointees. Korea's public enterprises were saddled with a combined debt of some $500 billion as of the end of last year, with their average debt-to-equity ratio nearly doubling over the past 4 years to 216%. The measure also includes abolishing or merging underperforming subsidiaries, especially state-owned energy companies which have made unprofitable investments abroad. Over the past 3 years, more than 60% of over 400 affiliates set up by public enterprises have yielded zero profits. The ruling party may be determined in proceeding with its reform drives, but is also facing fierce labor resistance. On Monday, unionized public servants disrupted a session between the ruling party and Pension Association as they were discussing how to reform the civil service pension program. Given the prolonged political standoff, ruling party lawmakers should take the time to secure cooperation from opposition lawmakers in order to enact reform-related bills. With no major elections scheduled until 2016, the time provides favorable conditions for pushing through legislation with help from the opposition party. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, for years, the Japanese government has been taking measures to purposely weaken the yen to give itself what many see as an unfair trade advantage over its competitors. The weak yen is weighing especially hard on many Korean exporters as the Korean won is currently trading near its strongest level in 6 years against the Japanese currency. Hwang Jie reports.
The weakening Japanese yen has emerged as a real threat to Korean automakers. Look at the second quarter performance of Korea's #1 auto group and compare it to that of their Japanese rivals. Experts agree that the country's auto industry remains vulnerable to exchange rate change.
I think the global consumer perception is that Japanese cars generally have a better quality. And the Hyundai has price competitiveness. So in this case, because Hyundai does not have the consumers' confidence, that they are going to be very much affected by changes in prices due to the exchange rates.
For the past 3 years, the Korean won strengthened by over 35% against the Japanese currency and is now trading near its strongest level in 6 years. This depreciation in the yen has been gaining traction on the back of the strong dollar trend, following forecasts of a potential rate hike by the Federal Reserve over the next few years. And when the pace of the yen weakening against the greenback has been faster than that of the Korean won, it's put an even stronger upward pressure on the local currency. Korean policymakers are also becoming increasingly concerned that the weak yen trend could hurt local exporters.
If Japanese companies start lowering costs based on the improved profitability they get from the weak yen trend, it will have a major negative impact on Korea's exports.
Now for investors, Korea's next rate-setting session set for mid-October is something to keep an eye on to see whether the weak yen trend will stick out as a major factor when policymakers consider lowering the key interest rate. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea's real wage growth, which reflects consumer prices, has plunged to its lowest level in 2.5 years. According to the Bank of Korea and the Labour Ministry on Wednesday, real wages at companies with 5 or more regular workers amounted to an average of about $2,700 in the second quarter of this year. That's up a meager 0.2% from the same period last year, and that is the smallest increase since the fourth quarter of 2011, when the figure posted minus 2.4% growth. Real income growth is calculated by deducting price inflation from the nominal wage, which shows the purchasing power of workers. Irregular workers in Korea saw their real income growth fall 1.4% during the same period to about $1,200 a month. Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Wednesday morning. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Hello there, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark.
So we're beginning to see some reaction to yesterday's airstrikes on Islamic State targets by US and those 5 Arab states that joined in. Let's begin with the al-Nusra front. This terror group in Syria says an assault and airstrike has killed their leader.
That's right, Mark. The al-Nusra Front probably is the lesser-known brother to the Islamic State group, both of which had their beginnings with al-Qaeda years ago. Now, just hours ago, the Syria-based extremist group released a statement on Twitter claiming that their leader, Abu Yusuf al-Turki, was killed during the fierce air raids of yesterday, attaching a photograph and an apparent proof of death. Now, no comment yet from authorities, though the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights did say the front was targeted during Tuesday's assault. Meanwhile, Turkey, an important U.S. ally that had been reticent to join the U.S.-led coalition against IS, in an apparent shift in stance, has said it is ready to give military or logistical support to the operation that U.S. officials now say could extend to years. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, meanwhile, issued a terror bulletin today to local and state authorities, warning not of a large-scale organized attack, but of retaliatory attacks by lone wolf sympathizers against yesterday's airborne offensive that, of course, had leashed some 200 strikes on IS military targets. And just hours after the U.S. and 5 Arab states had unleashed its firepower on the IS stronghold of Raqqa in Syria, the extremist group released a second video featuring the British captive, a photojournalist by the name of John Cantley. Now, in it, he warns those countries participating in the fight against IS that the conflict will become a quagmire like Vietnam. He appeared to read from a prepared script, looking directly into the camera in his criticism of the U.S. and several European nations. Now, a grim warning on the war of another kind, this time against Ebola. A new report by a U.S. health agency says the number of Ebola cases could dramatically soar in the coming months to up to 1.4 million in Liberia and Sierra Leone alone. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the toll is partly based on the premise that Ebola cases are vastly underreported. It believes there could be up to 21,000 reported and unreported cases in Liberia and Sierra Leone by the end of this month. The World Health Organization has said there are estimated 5,800 infections and over 2,800 deaths in West Africa, while conceding that they are likely to be gross underestimates. And finally, some 16,000 protesters crowded a park in Tokyo on Tuesday, protesting the Japanese government's push to restart nuclear reactors as early as this winter amid heavy anti-nuclear sentiment. According to Kyoto News Agency, among those in the crowd was Nobel laureate Oe Kenzaburo, who accused Tokyo of planning to restart the reactors without ample testing, thus showing a lack of contrition since the disaster 3.5 years ago. Earlier this month, Japan's nuclear watchdog had cleared 2 reactors in the Sendai nuclear power plant to restart among the country's 48 idling reactors.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we continue on with our 2014 Incheon Asian Games coverage. And we begin with the big event which took place last night as Park Tae-hwan won after his first gold medal during the men's 400-meter freestyle event. Now, despite China's Sun Yang not being 100% in this event, he still dominates the event, finishing first with a final time of 3 minutes 43.23 seconds for his first gold medal in Incheon. Meanwhile, Japan's Kosuke Hagino would finish second, followed by Park Tae-hwan, who wins yet another bronze medal in the Asian Games. And now moving over to badminton, where the South Korean men's badminton team went after their first gold medal in Incheon as they faced off against China in the final. With Son Wan-ho winning the first game in the singles event 2-1, the duo of Lee Young-dae and Yu Yeon-sung dominate the second game 23-21, 21-13 for a 2-0 win. Korea needing one more win for the gold medal, but China comes storming back to take the next 2 matches. But it's Lee Hyun-il who comes to the rescue, winning the final match 21-18 as Korea wins their first team gold in 12 years. And now shifting over to weightlifting, where Chinese Taipei's Lin Zu-chi broke the world record in the women's 64-kilogram event when she lifted 145 kilograms for the clean and jerk, and the combined weight of 261 kilograms as well. But it seems like we've been seeing a lot of world records being broken in weightlifting during the Incheon Asian Games. Now, so far in the 5 days of the Incheon Asian Games, 6 different weightlifters in both the men's and women's competition have broken 11 different world records. This includes the 2 North Koreans, Yun-chul and Kim Eun-guk, who broke a combined 4 different world records. Meanwhile, the only other world record that was broken was in the women's 10-meter air rifle event when China scored a combined 1,253.8 points. And now over to baseball, where baseball fans will be treated to a big matchup later tonight when Korea faces off against the Chinese Taipei. Well, it's because there's a good chance the 2 teams will meet again in the championship game. Despite rain in the forecast, Kia Tigers ace Yang Hyun-jong is expected to take the mound for the South Korean national team. And while the Chinese Taipei has yet to reveal their starting pitcher, they boast talented pitchers who currently play in the U.S. with minor league teams and batters who have great speed. Meanwhile, the Chinese Taipei beat Thailand 13-1 for their second win on Tuesday. Now, South Korea added a few more gold medals on Tuesday, including the women's saber team, which consists of Kim Ji-yeon, Ira Jin, Hwang Sun-ah, and Yoon Ji-soo, who defeated China 45-41 for Korea's first gold medal in the event. So let's now take a look at how the medal count looks so far after 5 days of the Asian Games. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Korea has been spending an increasing amount of time and money helping the nation's tourism, arts, sports and culture sectors. The current administration has made cultural enrichment one of its key priorities, and part of that goal is infusing the nation's identity with its culture. Our Park Ji-won has the details.
The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism unveiled its budget plans for 2015 Tuesday. The final number will come in at more than $4.5 billion. And while that's just 1.3% of the government's overall spending of $360 billion next year, it represents a more than a 10% increase from this year and the biggest boost among all ministries. The tourism, sports, and arts and culture sectors will make up slightly more than a quarter of the total culture budget each, followed by the contents industry at around 12%. By subsector, the sports and contents industry will see the largest rate of growth. That's partly due to preparations for the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in 2018. The contents industry, which includes film, music, games, and animations, will see more than 18% increase to nearly $590 million next year, as the incumbent administration sees it as a growth engine for the creative economy. The Park administration has vowed to increase the annual cultural budget to an OECD average level of about 2% of total government spending by 2017. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And while we're on cultural news, the Korean film industry is more diverse than it's ever been before, really. Nestled between the usual multi-million-dollar blockbusters are a growing number of independent films and documentaries that are grabbing the attention of audiences around the country. Shin Se-min reports on one low-budget indie film that has been making some serious waves at film festivals around the world.
The life of an ordinary 70-year-old woman who's traveled a rough road growing up in the tranquil city of Suncheon in Korea's South Jeollanam-do province, the documentary, Splendid But Sad Days, invites audiences to her story as a wife, a mother, and a fisherwoman who's devoted her whole life to support her family. This independent film had its premiere on the silver screen in Seoul on Tuesday for eager audience members who've been waiting for their chance to see the film. The 64-minute documentary has been highly praised by international audiences throughout the film festival circuit, including the Busan International Film Festival, Focus Korea of France, and the Montreal World Film Festival.
International audiences commented on the film's ability to capture the unfiltered life of a woman who gave up everything for her family. It also shows aspects of Korea's traditional culture. I'm glad the film was able to present this side of Korea.
Cinemagoers are saying that independent films like this have more of an effect on them compared to commercial hits.
I think the film will linger in my mind for days. It made me want to search for more independent films that can touch my emotions like this.
While the local documentary scene is small, the genre is growing. The independent film Old Partner, released in 2008, posted ticket sales of over 2.9 million. Splendid But Sad Days will be shown in selected theaters starting in Suncheon from Thursday. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
It's raining heavier than a few hours ago here in the capital, but the southern provinces have been receiving heavy downpours since early this morning, and more where thicker clouds will move into Seoul and its surrounding areas and will drop heavy showers. So the upper parts of the nation will see about 10 to 50 millimeters of showers today, while the rest could see up to 120 20 millimeters. And with this nationwide rain and the clouds, temperatures will be a lot cooler than yesterday. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. Now, the afternoon high in Seoul will only make it to 21, while Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 25, and Busan should top out at 26 this afternoon. Now, for other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will see highs of 27 and 23 respectively, while Dokdo peaks at 21. And it's going to be a rainy day for Incheon as well, where the Asian Games are in full swing. But it's forecasted that rain should go away by the mid-afternoon, so some of the games that are taking place outdoors could be postponed. So be aware of that. But the weather will be calm again tomorrow under lots of sunshine. Now that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it from us, for now at least. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Do have a fabulous day, and thanks ever so much for watching. Goodbye.